All right. So, last one of the day. This is kind of fun. I probably just have way too much stuff open on my computer. So, no, that's a Facebook thing if I'm freezing. So this is kind of fun. Uh, this is going to be a little video intensive for you guys to have a look at. But Paul, Paul. You were you did um, um, why am I? Yeah, I'm frozen. No, I'm frozen there. Yeah, that's a Facebook thing. Sorry, guys. Um, all right. Sorry there, guys. Let me see. Comments. Just frosty, not frozen. Just okay, cool. Not frozen. Thanks, Greg. Appreciate that. I'm frozen on my Facebook account here. Oh, there we go. No, I'm good now. All right. Let me just restart this. 53. Okay, let's let's get going here. All right. Um Offensive lacrosse goaltending. So I'm gonna kind of now and to the start of the new year, I'm gonna be doing more of kind of my take on the lacrosse goalie of the future, what that means, offensive goaltending, and just to kind of give you guys more of that attitude to work with. Um, for those of you that are um, that really want to adopt this idea of the lacrosse goalie of the future, like when you think so I had a strength conditioning coach I worked with kind of back in my Olympic days, a guy by the name of Alan Cosgrove in Santa Clarita, California. Phenomenal guy, Scottish guy, brilliant. Um, and there's a couple principles that I learned from him, and one was if you take two athletes of equal technical ability, the one with better physical ability will win. Right? If you think about that, so from like if we're going to battle for a ball in the corner, if I'm physically stronger than you, and we're equal technically, then I am probably going to push you off that ball. Like as a goalie, same thing. I can see the ball, I can know where it's going, and then I can go to move in front of that ball. Well, if I'm physically stronger than you, I'm going to be able to cover that ground faster than you, right? Because I'm stronger. So, um, so the idea is that when we look at improving a goalie's performance, if your goalie is just looking at other like pro goalies or worse, other high school goalies in their age category, and they're trying to basically outskill them, uh, you're you're on a recipe for frustration, right? So this is why I say I don't want your goalie to get stuck in the doing of goaltending, right? It's fun. Like being in the cage is fun and making saves is fun and getting shot on is fun. But it's getting in the gym is hard, right? Um, doing sprints is hard. Dropping body fat is hard. Um, Getting better grades is hard. So, but the idea is that when I look at improving the lacrosse goalie, if you're just looking at Kyle Bernlohr and Tim Troutner and Jack Concannon, and you're just trying to be like them physically, well, you're gonna be like them. But the improvements that happen in sport come when you start to apply like things outside of sport, right? And so Jay Abraham is a kind of a business and marketing dude. Wrote a book called "Getting Everything You Can Out of All You've Got," and he talks about business and he talks about marketing. When one company copies another company within their category, it's like marketing incest. He calls it. So I call this like athlete incest. As a goalie, you look at another goalie and you're gonna do what they're doing. It's like goalie incest, right? You're just everybody's doing the same stuff, right? And that's what I'm trying to get people to break out of is this idea that, okay, if you do what everybody else is doing, uh, physically, technically, tactically, well, you're going to have like incremental gains. But I think what's happened is that goalies have gotten worse relative to the improvement of everybody else in the field. Shooters have gotten better. Rules have made it so that the defense don't want to hit anymore, and defensemen have like sucked. And so shots are faster and more creative in both the men's and the girl and the boys and the girls game, and then the goalie is just like there, just like they were standing there in 1992, right? same gear, same sticks, same everything, um, less protected, right? Because equipment is thinner and lighter and whatever. So it just doesn't make any so we're seeing lacrosse like save percentage go down, right? I mean, I think the save percentage at last year's national championship was like 44%, right? Some of you guys might remember what that was exactly, but it was less than 50. And that's crap. Like it just doesn't make sense to me, right? So what makes sense to me though is looking for places within the game to make offensive moves as a goalie, right? So I think for the most part, people look at the goalie position as being a receiving position. I heard somebody describe it as a female position, being one where goalies are fairly passive and um they're receiving the ball, like they're catching the ball, they're not shooting the ball, right? So for those of you guys that get offended at the female analogy, just click away, please. um so the idea though is that I think mentally there's a mindset there where it's like, okay, I'm just trying to react to everything you send my way, right? And so I'm trying to just be as quick, and we see that, like that's how like Kyle Bernlohr plays. That's what that Tim Troutner video did a few weeks ago though is different, where he's coming out and he's going like, no, I'm going to dictate this, and that's what I love. That's what I've been talking about for like ever, right? So, and it's like turning the freaking Titanic with some of you guys, okay? But the idea, there was a Instagram post this week, um, and who wrote this? If you only fight for your limitations, you get to keep them. If it doesn't challenge you, it won't change you. That's good. That's good stuff. Who's that? Who's that? Who's that? Who's that? Can't tell who that was. Who is that? Hey, Sean. Good to see you. Okay, Sean. Good stuff. All right. So the idea here though is, let me just click over to so on Instagram this week, you might have seen this clip. All right. And And what happens here in this clip is the goalie changes hands. So I first talked about this idea, and I talked about it more to my Lacrosse Goal University members than I talked about it openly, which probably was probably a bit of a mistake. But since I'm kind of um, on a new mindset here of sharing more of this stuff, then here we go. When I moved to Canada, basically in 2001. And I looked for lacrosse up here, and I got a chance to play lacrosse with a bunch of like older Canadian box players. That's kind of the gist of what brought me on. I got very bored. Um, One, because the shooters didn't like to shoot from outside, like just in a Canadian box mentality. Like they like to be like within 10 yards of the cage. And if they weren't within 10 yards, they didn't like rip it. They just would dodge inside and then and shoot. And I started getting like really kind of bored with it, and I started messing around. And that's really when I started kind of messing around with the the changes in positioning, like making saves with your bottom hand, making saves with your elbow, and what I started to do, mess around with, was actually just switching my stance. And so, over the last couple of weeks, we've talked about offset goaltending, the idea of like, okay, not being straight up on the shooter, but being straight up, being offset to the ball based on where your stick is. Okay. So, just for a quick thing, I don't like this bottom hand position on this goalie. I don't like the vertical stick. That's crap, in my opinion. But then as you watch this shot happen, right, as you watch the shot come through, um, he switches hands. And I've talked about this before. People didn't really like understand this, and unfortunately, the video that I have is stuck on a 6 terabyte drive down here on my floor in my office, um, where I did a whole video with Holden Catoni um, on it. But the idea is that people didn't believe that you could switch your stick fast enough to actually make this work. And so if I just throw this down a little bit, okay. Um, if I just throw this down, okay, so there's the shooter looking at the cage. Now, what I believe we have as goalies, and a place where I think we have the ability to make a jump in save percentage, is the time between when the shooter makes a choice at the cage. Okay, um, maybe the uh, uh, like at some point the shooter will look at the cage and will decide where they're going with that ball, whether it's off stick high, off stick hip, it could be stick side high, like whatever. The idea though is that between when the stick is like pulled back and then the shot is followed through, there's actually a lot of time there, right? So if you watch this player wind up, now this player is totally uncontested, so this is the fastest that this could probably happen, right? Right. So there he's looking, he's picked his spot, he's winding up, and then the goalie switches hands. Now, couple things in this particular video, the shooter shoots it right where the stick is, and that's cool. But let's say that ball was like higher or lower, but it was to the off stick side. We all agree that a goalie should have an advantage when the ball is shot to their stick side. Now that doesn't always work out. I get it. But the idea here though is that we're kind of messing with the shooter's head a little bit. We're we're now adding something to our arsenal where what the shooter thought was there is now taken away. Okay? And so if you take this shooter and you move them around all angles, right? If you move them further as we're looking at it to the left, like to more towards side right, um, and the shooter has even less to shoot at, this becomes even more prominent. Okay. But the idea here is that there is time within the shot, like in the windup of the shot, to make a play on the shooter. Okay. And so I'm just going to fast forward here um, to this clip. Okay. Um, so Ryan Brown was it the 2016 Worlds, right? Or I think it was 2016 Worlds. Ryan Brown like lit everything up. And so if you guys check out this video on YouTube, for my Lacrosse Goal University members, this will be in the forum. But the idea here is that Ryan Brown scored a ton of goals, and they did this video, which was kind of cool. And what you can see here is three separate shots. Now these are close. These are close shots. I believe that's Adam Gittleman in the cage. Um, but I don't like how deep the goalie is in this situation. I think we got to change that. And also, the goalie is straight up on the shooter, pretty much in all except for that last video on the right. Um, but the idea here is that between the time that Ryan winds up, and that stick, there's so much lip in this stick. For that stick to be this far back, there's a ton of lip in that stick, right? But as he comes forward, there's time for a goalie to make a change. Now, what's kind of fascinating here is that this shot is very close. Like he's like within 10 yards. Okay, he's totally within 10 yards. And the idea is that I want I want you to just kind of notice what the time that this shot it takes to come through. Okay, so let's just watch this. I'll just play it. I'll play it once live. Okay. Now it's kind of fascinating as you watch this video is that when the goalie is so deep in the cage, okay, when the goalie is so deep in the cage, there's times when they can't get in front of the ball at all, right? So this is kind of an interesting a set of clips to watch because Gittleman is so deep, right? So deep that any shot that's kind of in any of these corners is probably unstoppable, right? It's unstoppable. But as a goalie, we have some options here. So in this windup, let's say here, let's say at this point, the shooter has decided where they're going to shoot. Now this shot is like right out front, top center. This is probably the worst place to try to do this, but at tighter angles, it's as I mentioned before, it's more effective. The goalie could add something here. They could shuffle. They can move. They could switch hands. They could put the stick low, bait them high. Any of those sort of things. But what's really fascinating is that when people watch a goalie switch hands, they immediately think like, oh well, if the goalie doesn't, if the goalie uh, like what if the guy shoots it stick side high and now he switches, and now his stick is across the body. What I found when you start to mess around with this is you still know you're still attentive to the possibility that ball could go stick side high, and you end up getting back there. But again, what makes that easier is actually when you're further out at the shooter. All right, when you're further out the shooter and you're taking less away, because again, all these examples are of a goal of a shooter hitting the cage. What you don't see is the shooter in a high pressure situation possibly missing the cage. Okay, so the idea, what's like this one on the right side here is pretty fascinating to me because Gittleman is so deep, he can't get to that ball. He couldn't even he can't get to that ball if he's like fully stretched out. See that? Like he's fully stretched and he can't get to the spot where that ball goes. So that's a problem, in my opinion. Like that's a problem. It doesn't have to that doesn't have to apply to a lacrosse goalie. Like it would apply to like a soccer goalie in certain situations, right? Because the goalie's massive, the cage is massive, but a goalie can still stretch and dive to get to those corners, like in time. Sorry, not in time. They can still get there, but in this case, this goalie can't cover that part of the net. And that's a problem, right? Because basically what you're saying as a goalie is like, okay, hey, I'm going to, if I stand here, you're going to hit that spot. Like, and sorry, if you hit that spot, then it's going in. But if you play offset and you encourage a shot to your stick side, well, you can still get your stick. It's easier to cover that area, right? Stick side than it is to try to cross over. And the other problem here, what Adam's doing here is by crossing that bottom hand under, that locks you up, right? So the idea is to basically, if I'm making a save to my off stick side, I want to, so I'm a righty, I'm going to pin that left elbow to my side, and that's going to lock my bottom hand, and I'm going to punch my top hand across and over. Then you can cover that. If I pivot my bottom hand under, which feels fast, I end up limiting how far I can actually cover that stick. So this is where in practice, you know, if goalies are just constantly taking shots from like top center and they're not like experimenting with position or stick position or maybe altering their stance between in the windup, they're missing an opportunity to improve, in my opinion. Okay. And so, so that this is an interesting shot because it's basically stick side high. It's like, and the goalie's thinking he's got to move everywhere. And it's like, wait a second. All I had to do was move. See, this is why I don't teach forward, guys. Like what happens here is Gittleman punches to the ball, right? The hands come forward, watch his right arm straighten out forward. And when in fact, all he's got to do is move that stick head basically 6 inches to his right. Okay. So that's why we teach on plane, moving the stick on plane. Again, this is another, there's a shot here. He comes forward and then up. He's already getting beat. But this is ridiculously close, guys. Like this is what I mean by the lacrosse goalie of the future. The only way you make this save, in my opinion, is you've got to be top of the crease. You know, you've got to be top of the crease, taking up as much net as possible, hoping because when the argument like, oh, I'll stand further back in the cage so I have more time to react to the ball. Well, how well is that working? Right? It's like right here. He's like 10 yards away. But the ball's past him before he even can move. Right? Like the goalie's barely moved. So that's where I'll just continue to argue. Like you just got to be as big as possible, out as far as possible, and then messing stuff up, like messing with their head, switching hands, stepping a little left, stepping a little right, whatever it may be for you. But this is where I believe that we have this opportunity, this to experiment here and try some stuff and dictate the play. And that's why I call this offensive goaltending. Instead of being that reactive, I'm waiting for everything to come to me, I'm going to assume you're going to hit the net. I'm going to take it to you and go, no, dickhead. I want you to miss, or I want you to hit me. Right. Or if you hit that corner, great. But the idea here is that I am going to put things in your, um, I'm going to put things more in my, um, uh, put the cards more in my favor, right? And put more pressure on you. Now, what's interesting here is that so Ryan Brown was just a great, people were fascinated by this. Um, People were fascinated by his performance at the World Championships because he scored a ton. And what he talks about is he talks about having this. He talks about having this. Uh, yeah, I'm just looking at this save here, right? So this is where if you took a baseball catcher and you put them in this situation, how they would move to this ball would be very different, right? Because as a goalie, as a lacrosse goalie, with an unprotected knee, like again as well, an ice hockey goalie back in like the 80s and early 90s would do what was called a kick save, and they would actually turn their foot out and expose the knee to this play. But as a lacrosse goalie who's not fully protected, see how he moves like heel first? That's not very fast, right? But what really needs to happen is that knee needs to just turn out and get right in front of her, but you're not gonna do that because it hurts like a mother pardon me. Sorry, parents. Sorry, when I don't mean to swear, it just comes out. But the idea here is that, you know, we need protected goalies. Ryan talks about how he views his shot like a clock, okay? And I think this is fascinating. I think goalies need to understand this too. Is that he looks at his shot like a clock, and so depending on the play, he basically is going to release that ball at some point on the clock, right? Whether it's 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, noon, whatever it's got to be, he's got that in his arsenal. Now, what happens to a lot of goalies is, especially when I did a video last week of how your coach should not be shooting on you. The idea was that your coach probably shoots at like one place on the clock, right? They're constantly like 3:30, right? And but then you get out into a game and your goal is like, dang it, 1:30, 2:45, 6:15, holy, so your goalie needs to kind of develop again that shooter library, that shot library. So here you go, slow motion. This is his full wind up. Like this is like the biggest wind up ever. And you'll see how much time you know, this is slow motion, but you know, there's a lot of time for that stickhead to come through, and the goalie has an opportunity to mess with the shooter, in my opinion. Okay, so it'll be up to you to, for those of you guys that have older goalies to just kind of try this stuff, to believe in it enough to try it. Because if your goalie just keeps playing the same way and they don't risk a failure, there's a fantastic stat: 95 and 97 from opposite hands. That's a pretty good deal, right? That's a well trained shooter right there. Okay, not sure what the accuracy is, but that's another story. Okay, but this is a great clip. So if you haven't seen it yet, go search. Just search for it on uh, Ryan Brown. I can't remember what. Just Ryan Brown shooting video PLL. Um, sorry, I don't have the URL there for it. But anybody have any questions on this? Anybody have any thoughts, any ideas? The idea, I think here, the big idea here is I believe wholeheartedly that the lacrosse goalie of the future, who is protected and who is proactive, can make some saves by taking things away. And like we showed at the very beginning, that clip on Instagram, you know, there's plenty of time to switch hands, right? And for the people that argue like, oh, no, it's not worth it. Like I doubt they've even tried it or even made any sort of or advantage. This works for the boys and the girls. Um, and again, I think one of the ways to just kind of train for this is if you take the stick out of a goalie's hand and you shoot on them with tennis balls and you say, I just want you to stop stuff. Don't worry about your stick. Don't worry about the ball. Just stop stuff. Have fun with it. You'll find they will come to these kind of conclusions and these things on their own. Um, Greg Lapham writes, "Would be great to know where in the shot in is the shooter committed to his location, meaning how late in the motion are they committed?" That's actually, Greg. I think it's really early. I think it's really early. Uh, I, I think I think for most shooters, the idea is that, man, they're going to look at the cage, they're going to wind up, and so the choice is before the stick is even taken back, right? Because their thought is more towards velocity, right? Like when you rip a ball at the cage, you're just like, let's go, right? And so it's like I'm picking my spot, and then I'm going to wind up, and then I'm going to go. I think there's a lot more time than people think. Um, and so if you just take your own stick and shoot, you'll realize like where it is. Now, in terms of changing, like that's a question, just to cover. The idea is like for a shooter, like let's say I scope the cage, and I see a spot, and I'm going to shoot for that. A lot of shooters take their eye off the cage for a second, um, and then come back at it. But let's say a shooter, let's say I'm a righty shooter, and I'm going to shoot on the, hopefully I do this right. I'm going to shoot to the left of the goalie, right? So I'm looking at the cage, and I'm going to shoot to the left of the goalie. Um, the idea, what ends up happening here is that a shooter may be able to hold on to the shot a little longer, but they can't release it earlier than what they wanted. Does that make sense? Like I'm not sure I've explained this clear enough, but the idea is that if I'm shooting at you and I've decided to shoot it, okay, let's say I'm a righty shot and I'm going to shoot it to the right side of the cage, but then I realize the goalie's got his stick there. I still may have a chance to get the ball over to the left side of the cage. But if um, if I don't, um, if I want to shoot it uh, left and I've committed to that, I'm not sure I would be able to release it early. I would have to push my hands forward. Like I got to think that one through a little bit more. I was trying to think that through before, and I was trying to think how to say that, but I think there's some wiggle room in there. So anyway, I think there's some food for thought here, and what I would love to see is I would love to see people just kind of mess around with this because people joked like when they saw it on Instagram, they laughed at it, and I'm like, no, there's more to this, and we've been talking about it for a long time. So hopefully, take some time, give it a shot, work on it, mess around with it. Let me know what you think, and post it back in our group. That'd be fantastic. Okay, so all right, everybody. It is I'm actually I got a goalie to talk to here in 15 minutes, so I got to chat. I got to leave. But thanks everybody for the questions tonight. Really appreciate it. If you're watching on YouTube or listening to the podcast or watching this on the replay anywhere, do me a favor, hit the like button, leave a comment. Let me know who you are. Um, um, right goalie. Who's this? Who's this? I don't know who wrote that. Right-handed goalie on right pipe, switch hands. Um, Well, that's stat. I'm talking more like in the middle of a move, like in the middle of the shooter's windup. So, so you could take a righty goalie on that pipe and then switch them. Okay. You could also take a lefty goalie and put him. You could like either way. So the concept is more switching in the windup. Okay. Hey Rob. Um. So yeah. So in this case, what I'm talking about tonight is making some sort of a move mid windup. Right? So let's say you're on the right pipe and you're giving them far side. Well, they're scoping up far side. They wind up, they go to shoot at it, and goalie just switches hands and is ready to just gobble it up on that off stick side, which is now their stick side. Right. I think I've never done this stats. Maybe somebody else can do it, but the idea is that I think if we just did a stat analysis of saves from side right on righty goalies versus lefty goalies, I'm pretty sure we would have a higher percentage of saves with a left-handed goalie in that situation, as opposed to a right-handed goalie, especially when that shooter is like coming tight to the cage and there's like a dodge or there's a potential for like a dive across the crease or whatever, I'm pretty confident that a lefty goalie has a better chance of making that save than a righty goalie. Um, and so the idea there, and I think that would go true for the other side too. Like a player coming from side left across the front of the cage, a right-handed goalie in that case would be better off, right? But that's where I just believe wholeheartedly, like the lacrosse goalie of the future will learn how to play with both hands. Um, Ashby had a kid that this Ashby Shepherd. Ashby had a kid that could absolutely bring it shooting on him tonight. He would go stick side high. And I told Ashby next time, as soon as you see his hands, get your whole body in that upper right corner. Yeah, well, I think what I would mess with there is, um, Ashby can probably agree to this. You know, as goalies, like we think we should be better stick side high, but I think what we end up doing is we end up assuming we're gonna have to move to make a save. And then what happens is that the brain's like, okay, the ball's gonna go someplace else. As the ball's en route, the brain's going like, oh, dang it. It's actually going like right here. And yeah, but then it's got to basically reverse the Titanic to move, and we miss those saves. Right. But when you see that clip of Adam Gilligan getting lit up by Ryan Brown from 10 yards, um, there's just the reaction time ability there is zero. Like it's just zero. So then we have to think tactically. So what do? Well, maybe we set up lefty, you know. Maybe we set up lefty. Maybe we give him, we drop our stick or we bring our stick more centrally located, and then move from there. Moving from central point out. I think that's, important to consider. Okay. And it's worth trying, right? It's worth trying because, um, again, I just don't believe that if you're just fighting on moving faster, we're not going to see a goalie have some insane reactive ability that's never been seen before, right? That's kind of tapped. I think the ability for the brain to process the ball, know where it's going, and then send the signal to move. I think we're not going to see some incredible reflex improvement there, you know. Um, but there's room on the tactical side of things. So if that guy's lighting you up, stick side high, it's like, all right, enough, screw that. Like now we got to do something else. Maybe I'm gonna stand more to my off stick side and give him that stick side and go, and play that game, right? Or maybe I'll switch hands and as he's in mid windup, I'm going to stand directly in front of that spot and see what happens and maybe take it off the dome of my helmet. I don't know. Right. But it's something other than just trying to like see the ball, know where it's going, and then move in front of it. Okay. Unless we totally stick like electrodes up Ashby's butt and then have some Monster Energy drinks and maybe some pre-workout, um, then maybe we might have some sort of um, that takes a lot of meditation to figure that out. All right. And an act of God here or there. So, all right. All right, guys. Listen, I hope this was good. Have a great night, everybody. Take care. Can't wait to hear about your goalies. Let me know what's going on, and be sure to post videos in the group and let us know what's going on. And yeah, if you got any questions you want me to cover in the future, just email me, Coach Edwards at lacrossegoalietips.com. Talk to you soon, guys. Bye. All right, guys. Thanks for watching and thanks for listening wherever you are. Do me a favor, hit the like button if you like this, and be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. When you're ready, head on over to lacrossegoalieuniversity.com/coaching so I can work with you and your goalie. And while you're at it, check out athletespecific.com to learn more about mental performance and high performance. You may not know this, but I work with athletes in a variety of sports. Lacrosse is my love, but man, I love athletes and the families who support them. So head on over to athletespecific.com, check it out. I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.